I'm Natalie, this is the Profit Golf channel. Thanks for joining me. Now, if you're a regular golfer, you will have at some point suffered with some form of lower back pain. It's really common through most of golf, and statistically around 25% of all golfers have suffered with some form of lower back pain across their golfing career. So if you play in a regular 4-ball, that is roughly 1 out of 4 of you suffering with lower back pain. So it's a bit of a problem within golf. And the lower back takes a lot of force through the swing. So we know if you're not mobile in the hips, you're not strong in the core, you're not strong in the glutes, then the lower back is likely to suffer more so than it would do. So I have 3 exercises here to help you protect your lower back, work on the hips, work on the core, and hopefully help you enjoy your golf pain-free. So the first exercise is called the hip flexor bridge, and this is designed to help lengthen the hip flexors, which when they're tight can cause lower back pain by tilting the pelvis, and also strengthen the glutes. But the key thing with this is making those 2 things happen at the same time. So you want something that you can rest your foot on, and ideally something with space on the other side. So a 90-degree wall or a straight wall with some space behind it, or a stanchion here like the squat rack in the gym. And the first thing we're going to do is shuffle the butt in, lie back, and place one foot totally flat onto the wall. This foot here has to remain completely flat. So the big toe, the instep, the heel, and the outside of the foot here all have to remain touching against the squat rack or the wall. That's really important. We need that foot connection through this exercise. The same thing happens here. So we have this foot down on the ground as well. So you have a 90-degree angle here roughly, and then a 45 roughly on the spare foot. Both feet touching the floor. I'm going to lie myself back, and I can just use my hands on the floor to help me. So all we're going to do from here is a normal bridge, and that means lifting the hips up. But because of the foot position in here, we're going to get a stretch through this hip flexor and a squeeze of the butt on this side. So the exercise looks like this, just relaxing myself on the ground, and I'm going to push and lift up here. So I'm clearing about maybe 3 to 4 inches off the ground maximum, and I can feel this stretch now running through this hip flexor. As soon as I hit that stretch point, that's when I can come all the way back down. So the hands on the floor, I'm going to lift, feel that stretch, and then come all the way down. Now, the idea to gain some engagement from the glutes is to drive both feet. So we push this foot to the squat rack and this foot down to the ground. So we kind of have this push-push system going on, which will lift you into this stretched position here, engaging this glute, maybe a little bit of hamstring as well. Now, some mistakes that we see with this exercise are having this foot too far away. So that A, it can't remain flat, and B, the hip flexor's already kind of lengthened, so we can't really engage that effectively. The same thing here. We have this foot either too high or too low. Both of those positions would mean that you would have to lift the foot in some way to get some leverage to push. So if you cannot keep the foot completely flat, you are not quite in the right position. Secondly, the most common mistake as well is lifting with the lower back. So people trying to achieve too much height here, again, the foot will change, and now we're just resting our body weight through the lower back and not settling down into that glute, lengthening through this hip flexor. We'd be looking for around about 10 to 15 reps of this exercise on each side. It's actually quite nice when you get into the movement. You should be able to feel that hip flexor lengthening and that glute contracting a little bit to help you. Make sure you remain pushing both feet, one into the ground and one into the wall with some pressure to help engage the glute as you drive that hip flexor upwards. Our second exercise is the alternating hamstring bridge. So this exercise is designed to strengthen the hamstrings, which control the position of the pelvis. And typically when golfers have weaker hamstrings, the pelvis is more likely to be in a pelvic tilt, therefore putting some pressure on the bones of the lower spine. So this exercise is designed to put you in a posterior tilt, which is the opposite position or a tucked position, and strengthen the hamstrings at the same time. I'm using the long foam roller. You can use a regular size foam roller. I'm using this because it's a little bit easier to see on the video. So from here, I'm going to lie back into a normal glute position and then just place my feet on top of the roller. Now, what's really important with this is that the middle of your foot, or the arch of your foot, is on the roller at all times. So we don't want the toes and we don't want the heels. It has to be that mid-foot position driving down on the roller. The more mid-foot that you get pressure on, the more hamstring engagement we will have. So from here, I'm going to lie back. Now, the further away this gets from your body, the harder this exercise will be. So I'm going to start at roughly halfway. So if this was all the way in and that was all the way out, I'm going to start roughly halfway. Using my hands on the ground to help me, I'm going to create a tiny bridge. So I'm going to lift off, but I'm barely, you can just about see here, just off the ground. So with that midfoot striking on the roller, you should already be able to feel the hamstrings working. From here, we're just going to alternate rows one at a time. And all that means is you're going to lift one leg off and bring it in towards the body, place that midfoot back down, and then bring the other one in towards the body, place it back down on the midfoot. So as you alternate the legs in terms of a row, you're aiming to keep the same height of bridge. In other words, that when you lift, you don't get higher through the bridge. You keep the hips really low to the ground, so barely off the floor. The lower you are, the more hamstring is working. And we're just going to row one foot in at a time. Now, every time the foot strikes back on the roller, press that midfoot down tight. Again, that will engage even more hamstring. And if you're finding this difficult, you don't need to row all the way in. You could literally just take the foot off here, get some control, place that back down, lift the other one off, get some control, place it back down, and work your way into being able to create more movement. If you're finding this too easy, we would then roll the roller slightly further away from the body. Now the angle has increased here, which means there's more demand on the hamstrings to maintain the same positions. So as a quick example, a little bridge using that midfoot position, I'll bring it in, much more strain on the hamstrings and much harder to control. It's pretty common to get some form of cramp with this exercise. So if you feel like you're getting hamstring cramp, don't worry. That is your body trying to do some work. Third and final exercise is a real bang for your buck. This helps strengthen the core, particularly the obliques on the side, and it helps to provide mobility to the rib cage, the shoulders, and the hips. So to do this exercise, I'm just using the little soft pad for my knees because the floor is quite firm. So use a mat or a cushion. And from here, we're going to go onto hands and knees. Now, you may have done a variation of this exercise previously. It's quite common, but there's going to be a slight twist to this one. So relatively neutral spine to start with. And my first position is to extend opposite arms and legs. Now, in this position, lengthen yourself as far as you possibly can. So my arm as far away from my midsection and my leg here really driving backwards. Don't worry about any dip here into the lower back or the spine position. Just extend yourself as much as possible. Now from here, we're going to curve ourselves back in. So I'm aiming to meet my right knee to my left elbow. So to do that, I'm going to bring them in and I'm going to curve through my spine, almost feeling like a bit of a crunch through the core area, holding it for a couple of seconds, and then extending all the way out. So lengthening as much as possible, and now crunching together or curving through the spine as much as possible. Holding these positions for a couple of seconds, extending all the way out again. And as you come in, you should be able to feel the core working quite hard in this crunch position here. So extend everything. Don't worry about the spinal position. And then as you come in, meet these 2 points as best you can and hold that curve for a second. Some common mistakes that are made with this exercise are people not lengthening out enough. So they're kind of just halfway into the movement. You've really got to extend the fingertips as far away from the toes as much as you can. Really get that extension of your body. Secondly, when it comes to the curve position, so moving inwards here, what we see people doing too much of is moving only through the arm. So bringing this in and without the knee really driving forwards. You've got to imagine that the knee pushes forwards as far as it can, and then the elbow will be able to touch. As those 2 points meet here, we get this curve through the spine, creating some mobility through that spinal area. So there we have 3 exercises to protect your lower back and avoid any future back pain. Give these exercises a go a few times a week. You can do these at home. They don't require any equipment. You'd be surprised at what a difference this makes just getting into those key areas. We had the hips and the glutes, the hamstrings and the core. And they're all vital areas to help protect your lower back from any injuries in the golf swing and on the golf course. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button for a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you viewing my content, and I'll see you next time for loads more golf fitness.